For years he ruled with wisdom and strength, feared by predators, and respected by all who walked beneath the great jungle canopy. Under his command, the gorilla clan thrived, safe from the dangers of poachers and treachery. The jungle pulsed with life under his watchful eyes. The young played freely, their laughter echoing through the towering trees. Mothers cradled their infants, their gentle hums blending with the distant calls of birds. The great silverbacks, his loyal warriors, stood as sentinels, their presence alone enough to ward off any lurking danger. No beast dared challenge the rule of King Komba, not the slithering serpents that coiled in the shadows, not the prowling leopards that watched from above, not even the ruthless hunters who sought to claim the jungle as their own. Under his reign, there was order, there was peace. But peace is a fragile thing, and power. Power can awaken something dark, greed, envy, a thirst for more, and somewhere hidden beneath the lush green canopy, behind the watchful eyes of his own kind, it had already begun. A whisper of discontent, a shadow of doubt, a mind poisoned by ambition, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The jungle was alive with the sound of the morning. Birds called from the treetops, leaves rustled as a warm breeze swept through, and the distant roar of a waterfall echoed across the valley. But beneath this harmony, something unseen festered. Deep within the dense foliage, a pair of golden eyes watched, unblinking, filled with something far more dangerous than hunger: ambition. Zaro had always been a warrior, a fierce and powerful silverback, second only to King Komba himself. But being second was never enough. He had fought beside his king, protected the clan, earned the respect of his kind. And yet, it was not Komba's name that sent shivers through the jungle, not his roar that made enemies tremble. It was always Komba, the great ruler, the mighty protector, the legend, and Zaro had grown tired of living in his shadow. The humans had come before, strange creatures with their metal traps and loud thundersticks, always looking, always hunting. Komba had driven them away each time, leading his clan deeper into the jungle, keeping them safe. But Zaro saw things differently. He had watched them from a distance, studying them, understanding their power. They weren't beasts driven by instinct, they were something else. And they had something he wanted: control. It began with whispers, soft voices in the night, doubts spreading like wildfire among the younger males. Was Komba truly the strongest? Did he lead them wisely, or had his mercy made him weak? Zaro did not speak against him, not yet. He only listened, only nodded, letting the questions grow, letting the fire of rebellion ignite on its own. And when the humans returned, this time with cages and nets instead of guns, Zaro saw his chance. The attack came without warning. The morning had started like any other, sunlight breaking through the leaves, the scent of damp earth rising in the air. The clan was gathered near the riverbank when the first explosion rang out, a deafening crack that sent birds flying in every direction. Panic spread like a disease. The humans had surrounded them, their traps closing in fast. Komba roared, rallying his warriors, but something was wrong. The others hesitated. Their trust had been shaken, their unity broken. And then, from the shadows, Zaro emerged, not to fight, but to watch, to let it happen. Komba fought like a demon, his strength unmatched, his fury a storm that sent men and metal crashing to the ground. But even a king cannot fight alone. The warriors who had once stood beside him faltered, their loyalty now uncertain, their fear clouding their judgment. And in that hesitation, the battle was lost. Komba's mate screamed as the poachers dragged her away, his infant clinging to her fur, wailing in terror. He turned to stop them, but the moment his back was turned, a shadow moved behind him, a crack of wood against his skull. Blinding pain. The world spun, his vision blurred, and the last thing he saw before darkness swallowed him was Zorro's cold, victorious stare. The king had fallen, the jungle held its breath, and in the silence that followed, a new ruler stepped forward. The world was dark, heavy, silent. Then came the pain, a deep, throbbing ache pulsing through his skull, his limbs, his very bones. Komba's eyes fluttered open, but the world around him was unfamiliar. No towering trees, no familiar sense of his clan. Only the damp stench of earth and blood. He was lying at the bottom of a ravine, surrounded by jagged rocks, his body battered and broken. He had been left to die. Memories surged like fire, the betrayal, the chaos, the screams of his mate, the cries of his child. Rage burned inside him, but when he tried to stand, his body refused. His legs trembled, his vision swam, and he collapsed back into the dirt. He had never felt weak before, never felt powerless. But now, he was alone. Days passed. The jungle did not wait for fallen kings. The rains came, washing away the scent of his blood. The sun rose and fell, each cycle bringing new dangers. A leopard prowled nearby, its golden eyes gleaming through the undergrowth. It crept closer, muscles tensed, ready to strike. Komba bared his teeth, but his growl was weak, his strength failing. The end was near. Then, a sound. Small, careful footsteps pressing into the damp earth. A figure emerged from the shadows. Not another beast, but something else. A human. A girl. Her clothes were torn, her face smeared with dirt, but her eyes were sharp, watching him with something he had not seen in a long time. Not fear, curiosity, understanding. She moved slowly, cautiously, a bundle of leaves and roots in her hands. Komba snarled, but the girl did not run. She knelt beside him, pressing something cool and damp against his wound. A sharp sting shot through his body, but the pain faded, replaced by warmth. The girl spoke softly, words he did not understand, but her voice was calm, gentle. She was healing him. Days turned to weeks. Strength returned to his limbs, the fire of survival rekindling in his chest. The girl, Liana, was unlike the hunters he had fought before. She did not cage or hurt. She mended, she taught, she listened. She, too, had been betrayed, left behind by those she once trusted. In their solitude, a bond formed, not of words, but of survival. She showed him how to use the plants of the jungle to soothe his wounds. He showed her how to move unseen, how to listen to the whispers of the trees, how to find safety in the wild. They became more than allies. They became family. But the jungle had not forgotten. The whispers of Komba's return spread like wind through the trees. He heard them in the rustling leaves, in the distant howls of beasts who still remembered the true king. Zorro had taken the throne, ruling with fear, his heart poisoned by power. And the humans, those who had stolen Komba's mate and child, still lingered, still hunted, still enslaved. The past had not been erased. It was waiting, festering, demanding vengeance. Komba rose from the shadows, his strength renewed, his purpose clear. He was not just a survivor. He was a king, and he would return to reclaim what was his. The jungle pulsed with energy, a silent force that rippled through the trees. Something had shifted. Something had awakened. The whispers of the forest carried the news like wind through the leaves. King Komba had returned. He moved like a shadow, his massive form weaving through the dense undergrowth, muscles rippling beneath his dark fur. No longer weakened, no longer broken. His eyes burned with purpose, his breath steady with control. Every step brought him closer to the land that had been stolen, to the clan that had been deceived. He was not alone. The jungle itself seemed to rise with him. The beasts that had once feared him now followed, drawn by the presence of a leader who had not been defeated, only delayed. The leopards that once stalked him now lurked in the trees, watching. The elephants, the rhinos, the birds, they all knew. The true king was coming home. But Zaro had not ruled in peace. He had shaped the clan into something different, something twisted. His reign was not built on loyalty, but on fear. Those who questioned him were silenced. The young were taught obedience, not strength. And the humans, the ones who had helped him rise to power, still came, still took what they wanted, still filled their cages with the stolen wild. But fear is a fragile thing. And when the first distant roar echoed through the valley, shaking the very earth beneath their feet, fear was no longer enough to hold them together. The attack came with the fury of a storm. Komba did not hide, did not wait. He emerged from the trees, his massive form casting a shadow over the land that had once been his. The guerrillas hesitated, their loyalty tested in an instant. Some backed away, uncertain. Others, those who still remembered the honor of their old king, stepped forward, their fists pounding against their chest in silent tribute. But Zaro did not hesitate. He bared his teeth, letting out a deafening roar. He would not surrender his stolen throne. The battle was raw, violent, a clash of titans that sent shockwaves through the jungle. Komba moved with power, but Zaro fought with desperation, his blows wild and reckless. The clan watched in silence, waiting to see who would rise, who would fall. Fists met flesh, growls and roars filled the air, the scent of blood mixing with the damp earth. But Komba was not the same as before. He had endured pain, learned patience, found strength not just in his body, but in his will. Zaro's rage burned hot, but fire that burns too hot always consumes itself. And when Komba struck the final blow, sending Zaro crashing into the dust, the jungle exhaled. Zaro lay motionless, his breath ragged, his reign over. The clan watched in silence as Komba stood over him, his chest rising and falling with deep, steady breaths. He could end it. He could take the revenge that had been carved into his soul since the day he fell. But instead, he stepped back. He turned away. He had already won, and in that moment, the jungle chose its king once more. The guerrillas moved toward him, one by one, bowing their heads in silent respect. The clan had been restored. The jungle had been reclaimed. But Komba was no longer the same ruler who had once sat upon that throne. He had seen what power could do, how it could corrupt, how it could twist even the strongest into something unrecognizable. He would not make the same mistake. He would rule, but not as he had before. Not as a conqueror, as a protector. And as the first light of dawn crept through the canopy, bathing the land in gold, Komba lifted his head to the sky and roared, not in vengeance, not in anger, but in triumph. The jungle was his once more, and this time, no one would take it from him. The jungle had changed, yet it remained the same. The trees still stood tall, their roots deep in the earth. The rivers still carved their way through the land, endless and untamed. The wind still carried the voices of those who roamed beneath the great canopy. But now, there was something more. A presence restored. A balance renewed. King Komba had reclaimed his throne. The clan moved as one again, their fear washed away, their unity reforged. The young played without worry, their laughter once more a song of freedom. The elders watched with quiet pride, knowing the jungle had found its ruler once more. Those who had once doubted, those who had been led astray, now stood before Komba with bowed heads, not in shame, but in understanding. He had given them something greater than victory. He had given them a future. But some wounds do not heal with time alone. The humans who had come to claim what was never theirs, were still out there, their camps hidden beyond the trees. They had stolen from the jungle, Komba's mate, his child, and countless others who belonged to the wild. He had reclaimed his home, but his family was still in chains. He did not hesitate. He did not waver. With the strength of his clan behind him, he set out once more, not for war, but for justice. The trail of the poachers was fresh, their scent carried by the winds. The jungle itself guided him, whispering its secrets through rustling leaves and shifting shadows. And at his side, unseen yet unwavering, moved the girl who had saved him, the one who had shown him another way to fight. Liana had watched these men before, had learned their ways, had seen what they did to the creatures of the wild. But this time, they would not escape unnoticed. This time, the jungle would fight back. The night fell heavy, cloaking the world in darkness. The poachers laughed around their fires, confident in their cages, their weapons, their numbers. But they did not know the storm that was coming. They did not hear the silent steps in the underbrush, the shifting of branches high above them, the slow, steady breath of something far greater than they had ever faced. And when the first cage door swung open, when the first captive beast took its first breath of freedom, the hunters became the hunted. Panic spread like wildfire. The darkness was alive, filled with moving shadows and glowing eyes. Chains snapped, roars filled the air, and fear, true fear, gripped those who had once held the power. Komba tore through their ranks like a force of nature, not to kill, but to end what had been started, to ensure no creature suffered under their hands again. And in the chaos, in the desperate cries and breaking steel, he found what he had come for. His mate, weak but alive, lifted her head as he approached. Their child, clinging to her, let out a soft, trembling cry. The moment their eyes met, the world stood still. There was no more battle, no more rage, no more pain, only the sound of a family reunited. By dawn, the poachers were gone, their camp nothing but ruins swallowed by the jungle. The creatures who had been caged now roamed free, their cries of joy echoing through the trees. And as Komba led his family home, with the clan following close behind, the jungle seemed to breathe once more. Balance had been restored. The king had returned. And this time, nothing would take him away again. The jungle stood still, bathed in the golden light of dawn. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the echoes of a story that would never be forgotten, a tale of betrayal, of loss, of survival, and of a king who refused to be broken. Komba moved through his land, his presence undeniable, his steps steady and strong. The scars of battle still marked his body, but they were no longer wounds. They were reminders. Reminders of what he had lost, of what he had reclaimed, of what he now swore to protect. At his side, his mate walked with quiet strength, their child nestled safely against her. The future had been stolen once before. It would not happen again. The clan had changed. No longer divided, no longer ruled by fear, they moved as one. Those who had followed Zaro now stood among the rest, their loyalty reforged not by force, but by choice. They had seen what true power was, not control, not dominance, but wisdom, strength, and the will to protect. And above them all, Komba stood, not as a ruler to be feared, but as a leader to be followed. The jungle had seen many kings. Some rose and fell like the rivers in the rainy season, their reigns brief, their legacies forgotten. But Komba was different. His name would not fade with time. His story would not be lost in the whispers of the trees. For he was not just a king, he was the spirit of the wild itself, a force as eternal as the jungle he called home. And as the sun climbed higher, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, a single roar broke the silence. Deep, powerful, unshaken. It rolled through the valley, carried by the wind, reaching even the farthest corners of the jungle. A sound that told the world one undeniable truth. The Gorilla King had returned, and his reign had only just begun.